April 2022, Romanian authorities launched an investigation into the Tate brothers raiding their home in the Eastern European country. Allegedly, they're holding 2 women captive, with the tip coming from the US Embassy concerning an American citizen. August 25th, Tate categorically denies holding the women captive or committing any wrongdoing when interviewed by Tucker Carlson, claiming he was swatted when authorities are falsely alerted to a crime. November 18th, and the gracious new owner of Twitter, Musk himself, unbans Tate after 5 years, alongside many others like Trump and Jordan Peterson. 2 days after Christmas, and arguably the biggest controversy on Twitter takes place between Tate and Greta Thunberg, with Andrew flexing his extensive car collection and Greta sending a rather amusing yet body-shaming response. The following day, Tate flaunts his cigar as always, paired with the declaration against recycling and pizza boxes. 24 hours later, and Tate alongside his brother Tristan and 2 other individuals are detained by Romanian authorities for a 24-hour period on human trafficking and rape, not specifying who the named suspect for the more sinister crime was. Of course, this was followed by mass media speculation and ridiculous claims that the Romanian authorities would not have found him if it weren't for the pizza box, which we debunked in a previous video as citing a random Twitter user. Impeccable journalism and definitely not pushing a narrative at all. December 30th, 2022, and a Romanian judge approved prosecutors' request to extend the detention to 30 days. Tate and the other suspects are now appealing the ruling. January the 4th, 2023, and Romanian authorities seized 11 cars belonging to Tate and his brother, equaling a third of the collection that Tate bragged to Thunberg about having on Twitter, including a Rolls-Royce Wraith and an Aston Martin Vanquish S Ultimate, and they are investigating whether they were purchased with money made from human trafficking. January the 10th, 2023, Tate, his brother, and 2 Romanian women who were also in custody lost their bid in a Bucharest court to appeal their 30-day detention, forcing Tate to stay in the country while officials continue to investigate. January 20th, 2023, Tate and his brother's detention in Romania was extended for another 30 days until February the 27th, while prosecutors continue their investigation into human trafficking and organized crime. During this timeline, although both brothers have been mentioned, Andrew is the one the media seems to be focusing on, and this clip might explain why.
When we often do documentaries, we have full access to speak to anyone we want. In this documentary, we've been very closely watched, picking who we can speak to, monitoring the interview. What is it that you're worried that we're going to find out?
This is definitely a hit piece. I've warned my brother that this is a setup, and this is what everyone in the chat is saying.
I don't care. I want everyone in the world to know when you plan on making a hit piece to me, you can sit there editing away, going, oh, I'm going to make a hit piece, and he's going to really upset. Do hit pieces, say bad things about me. I'm uninterested. I've clearly conquered the internet. I'm clearly unstoppable.
You've invited the liberal news media to come.
They can all come. I'm like the board. The more you shoot me with your phasers, the more I adapt. Harder to kill.
With how things have played out, perhaps Big Bro should have listened to Little Bro. Nevertheless, Tate has his view on the situation.
Did you hurt any girl?
Tate continuously references Romania and how the system is corrupt in the country, ironically one of the very reasons he moved there. Obviously, corruption exists in Romania as in every other country, but apparently it's not the type of corruption Tate was hoping, and there may be merit to this claim of corruption against the Tates by Romanian authorities. As this case is still developing, we'll stick to the facts available to the public currently. Tate has been arrested for human trafficking, rape, and running an organized crime group, yet none of these claims have been solidified into charges. To be charged, there generally needs to be evidence enough to suggest that a crime has been committed and that a court has a good chance of determining that the party is guilty and committed that crime. In this case, we've seen none of that. Instead, the Romanian prosecution has actually run to the judge with their tail between their legs, pleading for a 30-day extension again and again. They even went so far as to demand a 180-day extension from the judge, which clearly would have highlighted a total failure of the justice system in Romania. Tate's newfound attorney, Tina Glandian, seems to have controversy surrounding herself as well, having represented the likes of Mike Tyson, Chris Brown, and even Michael Jackson himself. He's clearly found a new knight to help save him from being checkmated by the Romanian side of the board, and this knight seems to agree with Tate's claims of corruption and injustice. Of course, a point that must be highlighted is the rule of law in Romania, where it is lawful for those alleged to be detained up to 180 days without any charges being filed by the prosecution. Of course, this comes under the assumption that prosecutors provide a judge with evidence making detention reasonable. This seems to be a largely misunderstood yet widely talked about topic online, the idea that that Tate and his brother have been arrested and held in detention for 30 days, potentially for a lot longer, and no charges having been filed. The way proceedings take place in Romania seem to involve the prosecution providing a judge with evidence enough to detain the alleged, pending discovery of evidence that allows the prosecution to charge the alleged. And yes, this can go on for 180 days, and although it seems ridiculous, especially for those of us in the US, it is lawful. It is also slightly ridiculous and seemingly hard to justify seizing all of Tate's car collection, especially under the guise of investigating whether they were obtained via a trafficking ring. It does seem though that the Romanian authorities need only make a link, however small and preposterous, that's none of a concern to the judge of the case. As for the victims of the alleged crime, here are 2 of the 6 publicly defending Tate.
Police have identified 6 women as potential victims, but last week 2 of those women publicly denied any mistreatment by the Tate brothers.
No, I've never been threatened. If I had been, I wouldn't have been stupid enough to stay in that house.
And yet, these people have been disregarded by the Romanian courts, who claimed they were unaware they have been enslaved and left traumatized and exploited. And the reason they've been disregarded is potentially of national concern.
Andrew Tate's reputation hangs on this case, but Romania's does too. Its message: that trafficking claims will be investigated, no matter how rich or famous you are.
With how famous and ingrained into our culture Andrew Tate has become, combined with how he's described the European country, it would make political sense for Romania to make an example of the alleged trafficker to try and improve their public image on the world stage. We did a video on another country concerned with their image on the world stage here, so check it out after. But if we're talking about Tate's image and how this affects him, we'll get into that in a second. For now, we know the Tate duo are opposing the Matrix and the mysterious global elite heavily, and this seems to be a continued narrative they're pushing and working even between transfers.
Ask the politicians, ask the judges, you're getting closer to the truth.
But why are they preaching this narrative even while in handcuffs?
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
To predict the future so accurately and even lay out a 3-step plan paired with a villain known as the Matrix carrying out this plan is going to strengthen an already powerful cult-like presence that Tate seems to have created with his fans online. When 2 of the 3 steps Tate has mentioned have already happened, being banned and then imprisoned, this only creates more fear and anticipation around the 3rd step possibly being completed, with Andrew being killed by the so-called Matrix or the global elites. As a result, you have people protesting, a guy driving outside Tate's prison blasting his theme song in support, and people defying criticism of Andrew Tate, including students in schools now fighting back verbally, of course, with high school teachers. The response: even stronger attempts to put down those who support Tate and what he believes in, with opposition reaching Parliament in the UK. For the first time in history, an influencer has become such a powerful part of generational culture that Parliament is now discussing him and his ideology as a threat. And with the distrust that people share for governments already, when their masculine leader is opposed and called a misogynist unironically, it just adds fuel to a burning fire in these people's minds. Particularly because Tate's fans are young, impressionable men, and they seem to have the strongest urge to fight societal norms and current ideas. So why is all of this going to benefit Tate in the long run? Well, it's simple. The more you censor or silence an idea or influential voice, the more those of that ideology will stand up and reject society even further in something known as the streisand effect. Instead, the smarter strategy to eradicating Tate and his ideas are tackling them with a different approach. Rather than using labels, censorship, and just an outright declaration that the Tates are evil, people need to be actually allowed to speak for or against the Tates, for sensible debates to take place in public in classrooms so that we can see the logic opposing them. Any form of oppression simply leads to further rebellion. But of course, this further oppression and downward pressure on Tate and his fans is only going to cause further tension in the minds of those young men following him. And this tension and belief in Andrew and Tristan's philosophy is what's going to encourage them to escape the Matrix. Follow the 3 steps he's mentioned before, ensure it looks like they are happening, and profit from more young men fearing the Matrix and seeking to break out of it themselves. And how do you escape the Matrix? You you buy The Real World, the duo's online education agency that was built to help young people do what they apparently did to escape. Escape for $50 a month, especially since the threat is getting larger and larger, with your leaders locked away right now as we speak, unaware if they will even be charged. What I'm getting at is this: Andrew's main benefit arising from his arrest is increased conviction his fans have within him and his university. Even total skeptics have to admit it's all gone exactly as Tate said it would, and that's interesting if nothing else. This whole ordeal will drum up sales, it'll increase his relevance even further, all the while creating a divide between young men and the rest of society, a divide that can be exploited by the Tates for profit. And speaking of divides, there's one getting larger and larger in the YouTube finance space between the older and younger generation, and it seems like the younger generation is taking over, with Bia Heza and Graham Stephan battling it out for attention without even knowing it. Click here to find out how Bia Heza is going to take over finance YouTube and how Graham has allowed it to happen.